Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for tonight's special program. My name is Megan Riketzel. I am the director of the Julio Fine Arts Gallery here at Loyola University, Maryland. And I have the honor and pleasure of introducing you all to our speaker, Nancy Daly. Before I do, however, a few notes of thanks and a bit of context. The gallery, and especially the Artist in Residence program, is supported in part by the Lily and Christine Sane Fine Arts Programmatic Support Fund, as well as by the Maryland State Arts Council. To discover more about the Maryland State Arts Council and how they impact Maryland, visit msac.org. Please connect with the gallery on Instagram and Facebook. We are at Julio Art Gallery to keep up with our programs and exhibitions, and learn more about the gallery and what we do on our website, julioartgallery.com. Each year, the Julio Fine Arts Gallery hosts an artist in residence. What shape this takes shifts with each artist, but the overall idea is the same. The artist presents an exhibition, gives a talk, and engages our community in their art making. The vision of this program is to not only provide our community with thought-provoking exhibitions, but also to provide a diversity of voices and approaches to art making, to get our community thinking broadly about ways to approach art. As you will hear more in her talk, I think our 2021-2022 Artist in Residence Nancy Daly is a perfect fit for this goal. Her work is at times surprising, beautiful, simple, needlessly complex, and both incredibly specific and personal and universally relatable. I'm thrilled that she will be joining us at Loyola for much of the month of March, and that she will stretch our minds and our ideas and approaches to art making over the course of a 40-hour week, March 21st to 25th, and I hope you will join us too. Nancy Daly is a Washington, D.C. based interdisciplinary artist whose work examines how the development of the online social world is affecting identity and social behavior. Repetitive action and the subsequent buildup of material and information to an absurd degree is a common theme in her work, reflecting the vast quantity of information that we are bombarded with every second. Daly earned her MFA in Photographic and Electronic Media at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and holds a BFA in Studio Art with a concentration in Graphic Design from James Madison University. She was a DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities Fellowship Program grantee from 2016 to 2021, and is an alumni of the Hamiltonian Artist Fellowship Program in Washington, DC, 2014 to 2016. Her work has been exhibited nationally with 15 solo and two-person exhibitions, as well as numerous group exhibitions. In addition to her studio practice, Daly is the co-founder of But Also, an artist-run business dedicated to the sustaining of art practices in a multitude of forms through a series of short-term projects whose mission is to support all the aspects of an artistic practice that surround making of art. Here at Loyola, her solo exhibition, Ruminations, will open this Thursday, March 3rd, with a residency project in process over the week of March 21st to 25th, and a closing reception at which we will be able to see the final form of the residency project and hear more about that process on March 31st. We hope you will join us for all these events, and now I hope you will join me in welcoming Nancy Daly.
Oh boy. Thank you, Megan, and thank you for having me. And thank you all for coming. This is like the week before spring break, right? I'm not sure if I would have been here if I was you, but I appreciate that you are. So yeah, tonight I'm going to talk about the show that's up right now and the project that I'm working on, that I'll be working on with you all, and a little bit about where this work came from, and some of my other work that, as I was putting this show together, I sort of realized, I've been playing around these topics for a while, even though I wasn't directly using them. So anyway, This is Ruminations on Ruminations, an artist talk in which I ruminate on ruminating and how ruminations came to be. So to ruminate is to meditate or muse, to ponder, to brood. There is no completion to the thought. There's only the thought performed over and over, often resulting in increased anxiety. So this is sort of like the basis for the entire show. This idea of like repetition, and like what comes from that, and how sometimes something great comes from it. Oh, God. Sometimes something great happens from it, and sometimes not so much. You guys are supposed to tell me. Okay, if it seems like I haven't, anyone can speak up. Let me know. So all of the works in this show start with an action, and I do the action over and over again until it builds up into something else. This all came from, like Megan mentioned, like a lot of my work, even though when you go into the gallery, it might not look like it's like deeply personal to me, it all comes from my reaction to the world and like deeply personal things. So basically this whole thing started out of a series of unfortunate events in my work life. Since graduating from grad school, I've had just like a series of like very tragic jobs for lots of reasons, but that I won't go into. But like with a lot of jobs that surround your passions, you're often asked to do a lot of work for very little money. So like that's essentially what I fell into. And so like for years I've been thinking about this, and like a little bit thinking about how pointless all of it was. And then at the same time I was thinking about social media and like how, like just like with the work, the type of work that I was doing, where it was like a lot of work for the sake of work, with little payoff. I was thinking a lot about how, like with social media, how relevant you are. I am not relevant at all in this. I'm just thinking about it generally. But like how relevant you are, it has to do with like how often you're posting. So it's like more quantity over quality. And so I like coming at this from like distilling that idea of like only quantity over quality and like seeing if quality can come out of it. Megan also mentioned that my MFA is in photographic and electronic media. Like I say this a lot, but like my dad likes to say that I was the "and" of the photographic and electronic media. Like I wasn't doing photography in grad school, even though it was a photography program, and I wasn't really doing electronic media. I was sort of like interested in all of the topics surrounding it. And so that's what like led me to like talking about the internet a lot. So I started thinking about YouTubers and how like many YouTubers, not all YouTubers, like make tons and tons of money by doing like kind of pointless things. That doesn't mean that their work is pointless. It's just like they do pointless things and they get a ton of money. So this is a screenshot from a Christine Rottenberg video. She does like her screen name or whatever is Simply Nailogical. She has like a lot of like nail YouTube videos. She was challenged by her followers to like paint all of her nail polish onto her nails, and she made this thing that she called Polish Mountain, and then it became like a trend on the internet, where like lots of people were making these like Polish Mountain things. So then I was like looking up like what is her net worth, and she like, according to the internet, she makes between $179,000 and $2.9 million a year from like doing stuff like this. So then I was like, I can do that too. And so this is an ode to Polish Mountain. This is in the show. So starting in 2019, but like through 2020, I painted 357 layers of nail polish. Sort of just like as a way to like explore that like thing on YouTube. And then I was thinking about how like when we put it in the art gallery, like now it's art in a way that like the YouTubers stuff isn't considered art by many people, but it is. There's a close-up. And then along the same line, I feel like was again looking at YouTube trends, and I saw this Japanese YouTube trend of making balls out of aluminum foil. So I started with like 100 yards of aluminum foil, and I crushed it into a ball. And so like that's in the show, and I'll show it to you in a minute. But at the same time, I was reading about Anish Kapoor and Vanta Black. If you don't know it, it's like the blackest black in the world. It blocks out like 99.9% of light. And the artist Anish Kapoor like bought the rights to it, and so it was like he's the only one that's allowed to use that black. And he did stuff like this, The Gathering of Clouds, 2014. At the same time, so then there was this guy named Stuart Semple. He's on the internet. He's making like pigments, and he's like, I'm going to make basically a black that is almost that black as I can get it. And I'm going to sell it to anyone that wants to buy it except Anish Kapoor. And so I'm like thinking about these two things, and like the taking of something flat and making it into a 3D form just through sheer force, and then just like slapping a coat of black paint on it and then flattening it again. And so that's this aluminum foil ball, which is in the show. And then like the Japanese trend, it's also like about like this idea of like meditating through work. So you're like taking a thing and you're just like hammering until it forms this like beautiful shining thing. So then that led me to, this is not in the show, this is Nailed It from 2019. And so this was the first one that I thought of as like as sculptural documentation of a performance. And so I just hammered into this board over and over again until it started to split and I couldn't hammer anymore. Then the pandemic hit. So like all of these things were like before COVID. I was just already thinking about time and wasting time and work and like all of those things. And then COVID hit. And my roommate and friend and I started watching Love Island, UK, season 6. We like started it like the very beginning, like it's a joke, like we're just gonna watch a little bit of it while this COVID thing goes away, and then we watched the entire thing. Season 6 is, I think it's 29 hours. Yeah, but like what were you doing? And so like while we were watching it, and after, like I was also thinking about like all of the things that people were doing to sort of like cope with their time at home during the pandemic. Like, oh, you take up knitting. And so I like loom knitted this scarf for 29 hours and 21 minutes, the full length of time. They can pay season 12 Island, season 6 is going. And I was thinking about like the contrast between like passively watching these people and actively making something, and the intersection of where like I'm like knitting it, like it sort of became like a passive action as well. And then that led to Send Nudes, which is this. This is also not in the show. So I'm just showing you some things that are part of the series that are not in the show and stuff that's in the show. So Send Nudes was, basically I went through the process of making handmade pasta, except I was just like using a dough that like you couldn't eat. I just like saved it encased in this like jar. And I was thinking about like how during, you know, people talk about like making food from scratch is like so nourishing. It's like not just the food that's nourishing, it's also like the action of doing that is nourishing. And so I was like, what if I take out the eating it and I just like go crazy with making these noodles for hours and hours? Like, will that also alleviate anxiety in a similar way? It does not. And then over time I started like, you know, I was doing these like sculptural actions, but I wanted to like distill this idea of like working for the sake of working. I was like, how can I like make this even more pointless? And so I started doing these drawings that are like using up the entirety of the tool that I'm using. So this one is a black wing pen or pencil, and this took 2 hours and 12 minutes to make. This one's a Prismacolor in hot pink, took 7 hours and 29 minutes to make. This one's a micron pen. It was an absolute nightmare. This one's a micron pen. It was an absolute nightmare. It took me 18 hours and 3 minutes to make. This is just like a little, like when I'm talking about like I'm at home doing a performance, and this is like documentation of performance. Like the performance is that I'm sitting in my living room and my cat is there bothering me. Like the other thing you can't see as well that I'm like trying to show here is like as the pen runs out. And when you're like in the space looking, you can also see like when I start sort of like etching into the paper, and it's just this like crazy action. This is a Sharpie China marker. Only took like 1 hour and 30 minutes. And so like as I'm making these two, I'm also thinking about like the value of art and the value of my work, like my labor. So like when these are priced, they're all priced according to like an hourly wage that I've assigned to myself, or someone's assigned to me. I also work an hourly job, so it's like if I'm putting all of my energy towards this and I'm getting paid an hourly rate, that's how the pricing of these is reflected. So like, even though they're the exact same size, I'm also playing with like how things are priced. This is a Papermate Inkjoy in lime, 12 hours and 4 minutes. This one is, it's almost impossible to see, but you'll see it in the gallery. And what it is that I drew a line of Sharpie down the middle of the paper, and then I used a sand eraser to erase it. And it's really just like digging through the paper slowly. So there's like little rips, and then it's also like really thin in the middle. This one is a Papermate Inkjoy Teal. This took 21 hours. And so this was an early one. I started with that bottom piece, and I picked the paper that was too small, and so I had to keep extending and extending. This one's another micron. I cannot stress to you enough how much you should not do this. It's very, very boring. This took me 42 hours and 23 minutes, and I hate myself. But it's kind of cool, the pen stroke. Along the same lines as the eraser, I was like, well, what if I'm just doing the action? And I know, but it's not really that clear. And so this is white on white, which again, here is almost impossible to see. And in the gallery is just slightly less than almost impossible to see. But I know it's there. So all of these drawings are in the exhibition. They're remnants of past work. And then there's also a few pieces that are interactive or actively happening while going on at the same time. So these next two slides are just showing part of the inspiration for the form of the piece. The piece is called Job Switching. This is from the Isle of Lucy episode, Job Switching, in which she and Ethel switch. Basically, it's this they're women in the home, and then their husbands are well, you go out and get real jobs, and it's all messed up in that way. But the point is that they try out these jobs. They go to a candy factory. There's a conveyor belt going. They are supposed to wrap the chocolate, but it's just quickly becomes overwhelming to them, and all of it. It's much funnier when you watch it than the description. But that scene was sort of inspired by Modern Times and Charlie Chaplin, where he's exploring in 1936 modern times and automation and what that's doing to people, and he's being Charlie Chaplin and going through a series of hilarious events. And so what that translates into this piece is this. It's called Job Switching, and basically what happens is that every minute this machine, in the white box, checks my email and sees if I have checked my email or if I have any unread messages. And if I have unread messages, it drops chocolate onto this conveyor belt that goes conveyors and drops to the floor and makes a big mess in the gallery. The spoiler alert is that I will always have unread emails, and they will just keep coming forever. And I find it very overwhelming. So this, while everything else in the gallery is this pristine, framed, is making a mess of chocolate all over the floor. Sorry, Megan. And the other part of it being in the space and it actually working in real time is that even though I am not physically in the space, what I am doing is affecting what's happening in the gallery. Which is semi-related to this piece that will also be going on. It's called Portrait of the Artist as Administrator. So, in addition to being an artist, I work as an arts administrator, run my own gallery. I've been doing that type of thing for years, but also all artists have to do a ton of administrative tasks. So in this piece, I'm cleaning but like actually like cleaning the floor of the gallery with the Roomba. So it's like kind of gonna pick up the chocolate, but it's not, there's too many emails. So it's like actively cleaning, and then it also has a webcam on it. So I will also be like documenting my own show through this webcam while it's cleaning the space, and it's like it's really bad webcam footage. It's like the type of camera that's supposed to be mounted onto a thing that doesn't move, so the footage is just terrible. It's like super jerky. And so I'm also thinking about like documenting art and how that gets put onto the internet and how it's like always kind of missing something. And then the other thing that's going on in the space at the same time is this video of that I call Still Life with Ice Cream Sandwich. And it is part of, so I think of the work in the show like Ruminations on Work, and I also have like it's part of a larger series that also includes Ruminations on Time. So this piece is from Ruminations on Time, and it is a video of an ice cream sandwich melting for 8 hours, but it's sped up for 2 hours. So totally manageable thing for you to sit there and watch. The thing about the video, which I will tell you because you came to the artist talk, so you do not have to watch all 2 hours, is that it like barely melts. So like a few years ago, I saw this thing on the internet where this woman was talking about how this is like a silly story, but she was like eating an ice cream sandwich. She didn't want to finish it. She tossed it into the yard for like her neighbor or for like the bugs to eat. And then she like went back the next day and it was still there and nothing had eaten it and it hadn't really melted. Because it's not ice cream. It's like a foam substance. Like that's how, I mean like I'm sure good quality ice cream sandwiches, but this is not, this is just like your run-of-the-mill ice cream sandwich. Doesn't really melt, it's horrifying. And the reason I'm including it in the show is to throw in this idea that like we don't like really even have, like how can we even have a firm grasp on what time means to us anymore at this point if like things that are like clearly supposed to melt and show the passage of time are not doing that in the way that they should be doing that. So yeah, Ruminations on Time calls into question our relationship to time and draws attention to our reliance on productivity and activity to tell time. Sculptures in this part of the series are visual representations of the passing of time while performing time-wasting activities encouraged in online communities, like scrolling through Instagram, wishing someone happy birthday on Facebook, or pinning things on Pinterest. And so I'm also thinking about how like the things that we use to tell time now, most commonly, not that the iPhone and the Apple Watch are everyone's most common thing, but like using a phone or having a watch that does other things, like screwing up with how we think about time. It's like pulling productivity. I mean, like, the way that we perceive time has always been tied to productivity, but like even further on an individual level, it's like, how many steps am I getting while also time is passing? And so I'm just thinking about how, like, that's screwing with everything. So also in this part are these sculptural forms made from candles. They're supposed to, like, reference votives, and they're also like a physical thing that we are witnessing the passing of time through. So this one is called Happy Birthday to Me, or Tall Cake, and it's 430, well, as of before my birthday on 2020, it was all of the birthday candles it's a birthday candle for every time somebody wished me happy birthday on Facebook, which is completely pointless, and it will just keep building on forever as long as I'm on Facebook. Yeah, so this is from 2007 to 2019. This one's called Do It for the Gram. The colors are meant to reference the Instagram's logo, and it corresponds to like a period of time that I spent just like scrolling through Instagram. This one is called Pinterested. And so it's like a ceramic duck that I've painted, and it's on like a plywood craft board, like things that you might see crafting on Pinterest. And there's a candle melted into it for every pin that I have on Pinterest that I've like done nothing with. So those pieces are not in the gallery. This piece is also not in the gallery. This isn't a piece, this is just a Google image search. But, like I said, that there are other interactive things in the space. So, in the coming week, there will be a puzzle will appear in the middle of the space. I will not tell you what is on the puzzle. You have to put together the puzzle as a community to see what it is. So the idea is that like the show doesn't really get completed unless you all are also participating. But I'm also like not really asking you to participate that much. So, you know, thinking about like levels of commitment to a project and like how much time different people that are involved can spend on these things. This is also a Google image search. But this is the brief pitch if I didn't talk to you guys in a classroom earlier today or yesterday. On March 21st, the week of March 21st, for 40 hours that week, I will be in the gallery making another piece that's in the same vein as all of these, where it's like the repetition, like there will be like a small action that I'll perform over and over again. It'll build up into something. And you are all invited to participate in that. I used this image because the first step in the process that we'll be doing is just punching holes, like in paper. And we'll be collecting all of the holes, and then we'll build those holes up, like on string, and then those strings will be formed into a sculptural form. The things that we don't know about this is what it's going to look like, how many people are going to participate, the speed with which we'll work, how big it's going to be. But I think it will be worth the time because you'll learn something. It's about the journey. And then at the end, everyone that participates will get a percentage of the final sculptural form based on how much time you put into it. So again, it's like, what you get out of it is directly relating to like just the action. It's like very low skill level, so it's just like, it's all about just like doing this thing together. It'll be a blast. So this next part that I'll go through quickly, and then we'll go through questions, is like some old work that shows how I've sort of been like thinking about these things for a while and like other ways that I've explored it. So this is my brother Jack, and when Jack went to school for creative writing, and then when he graduated from his creative writing program, he got a job at this website that writes blog posts. So he like wrote blog posts. And then this is a spoiler alert in case you haven't, the internet hasn't been ruined for you already. But companies hire, like big companies, I'm gonna use Home Depot as an example, although I have no idea if Home Depot does this. Like big companies that have like blogs, or like who writes those blogs? It's not somebody that works at Home Depot that knows a lot about tools. It's like my brother. And basically companies hire these blog writers, and the blog writers will go onto other blogs and other websites and do research about the topics surrounding what they're talking about, and then they'll rewrite the blog posts in the voice of the company. So like if I was like working for Home Depot, I have to write about hammers, I go on to maybe like Lowe's blog or like a mom and pop, and I like see like what are people writing about hammers, and then I would like write about hammers as if I'm Home Depot. And like it's sort of, this like type of practice is sort of messed up because also they have like really insanely high word counts that they have to complete every day, and so like they're sort of like put in a position where in order to make money they have to be like a little bit sloppy about the research, and so it's this just like endless loop of like people reading other blog posts written by people who are reading other blog posts, and it's an endless cycle. So what I did for this series is that I Googled different phrases, like this one is inspiration for your man cave, and I just started printing out the first blog post that would come up about that, and print it out in this loop as if it's being printed between two printers building up on each other. And then it becomes unreadable. So these are like hung loops. This one is, I think, how to pick a fall coat. And one of the things that this is like the basics of cloud computing, is that the way that the layouts and like the design for these different types, like depending on the article, sort of seems to dictate the form. So like if we look back on inspiration for your man cave, there's like this weird, like no one puts anything in that section for inspiration for your man cave, but people do when we get to like DIY wall art, for example. So I'm like already thinking about like repetition and build up and like talking about these like messed up work practices. This is Save As. This I did at Hamiltonian Gallery in 2015. And so here it's like somewhat related to like the Gmail or my email thing, job switching that's in this show. But I like sat in the gallery for 2 weeks and I printed everything that I had saved on my computer from 2002 to 2015. I'm a digital hoarder, but I feel like you probably are too. And so mounted to the ceiling were the printers, and so I would like sit there and print, and the paper would fall on top of me, and I slowly get buried. This you can't really see, but what it is it's like all of the file structures of all of the files written out. So you can like see how it was like organized on my computer. And then towards the end of the exhibition, I then started like resorting everything back into a different form, but physical. Okay, I'm just gonna blow through this, but this is, when I like give talks at schools, I like to show like pretty old work. So this is my thesis work from grad school. It's It's called Misconnections. And basically what it is I took posts from the Misconnections section of Craigslist, and I like water jet headed them into aluminum, and then I made these boxes, and I filled the boxes with Crisco, and then people could come to the gallery and crank the side of the box, and then Crisco like comes through the letters, and you used to be able to, like, you could see them. It was readable at the beginning, but then as people interact with it, it gets less and less readable. In case you don't know what the Misconnections section of Craigslist is, it was like you would go on and be like, I saw you on the bus, and I think maybe we looked at each other, and I'm in love. Or like there was, well, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but, so you go on and you just like yell this out into the internet, on Craigslist, and then people will like email you back and be like, that was me, or like that was this other person. And so the idea behind it is that, and the form of it is that like you're putting something that seems like this permanent thing onto the internet. It's like a memory that you had. You're thinking about it and fantasizing about it, but then other people get to come in and then they also do stuff to your memory of it by like throwing in these fake or real, like their parts of the encounter. And so it's about like this memory and build up. And I used Crisco because Crisco is like something that you like add to baked goods, makes them taste good, but it's not really good for you. It's this like gluttony thought and material. And this came from like when like I said, like this was when I ended grad school. I went into grad school for photography. I thought I was going to do photography. And I was like really into street photography. And then I got there and I went to MICA in Baltimore, and I didn't really feel comfortable immediately for like a variety of reasons doing street photography. Yeah, this is what a misconnection looks like. 518, man for woman, 29. Damn So like in critique during grad school, I was challenged to think about like what was interesting to me about street photography, and it was really just like seeing people and like seeing how they interact. And so then I started making these like insane Excel spreadsheets, like going through misconnections and seeing if I could find patterns with like where misconnections often happened, who they were happening to, like could I go and witness one? I did not. Yeah, and so like it was like the writing of it became the interesting thing, and the idea that like there's this permanent record on the internet and it goes away after a month, but like does it? There's probably somewhere. Should I start breaking for questions? Yeah. Okay. That seems like about enough. There's like a couple more projects. I'll just go over it really quick. So, subject, terms, and conditions. This was like a board. On the left-hand side, there's lights. On the right-hand side, there's switches. And under the switches, there's these little pull tabs that say like the terms and conditions to flipping the switch. So if you flip the switch, it said that I would donate money to different causes. And so what I found is that people were not reading the terms and conditions, just like none of us read the terms and conditions. And that came from like updating my iPhone and like just selling my soul so I could use the iPhone and not looking at it. And people are just like making these aesthetic decisions based on, like with no regard for consequence. And then this one is related. It's called One Must Consider Them Happy. It's a reference to like the end of Camus' writing on Sisyphus. Like Sisyphus is like rolling the thing up the hill, and he sort of like ends it with like, why does he keep doing it? Like, maybe we could consider that he likes doing it, which is weird and dark. Oh, this seems like a good place. I don't know what's on. Okay, so I made these board games based on different systems that I saw. So this is the Game of Life social media edition. And I basically just like redesigned the entire board to look like the board that I grew up with playing. And like they were viewed like framed on the wall, but there were also playable versions of all of these games. The thing that is common among all of the games that I made is that they're not winnable. So like you get to the end of this one and it's like they figured out a new platform. So all that work you did on TikTok is gone because there's a new thing. This one is electoral risk, and so it relates the election to like a war and like gaining territories in that way. This one's gig economy, chutes and ladders. Like I said, I had not great job luck, and so like for a while, I was driving Uber and thinking about the gig economy a lot. And in this one, like you can never win. You get to the top and you go back down. Just like this endless cycle of work. Like this one, like you pick up somebody and they bark in your car. This one's Sorry Not Sorry, the game of promotion in higher education. And so in this one, like, it's based on like the percentages of like available tenure line jobs in the US at the time of the making of this game, as opposed to like adjunct positions. So like I think it's like the yellow players in this game are the only ones that can actually win, and everyone else just plays forever and ever. And then this is Settlers of Catan, but it's like about gentrification in DC. There we go. Any questions?
What should they know about before coming to working with this?
Ooh, that's a good question. What they should know is that it requires absolutely no skill. Like anyone can do it for any period of time, and they will have participated and contributed equally. I mean, not equally, it's based on time, but like you can't mess it up. It is about like everyone coming together and being together in the space and working. Sometimes that'll just be like me and like somebody that walks by, sometimes it'll be a whole class. But it's like, it's a little bit difficult because the piece hasn't been made, but like the thing to know, like think about like when people like get together and quilt or craft. It's like that. And then something will come out of it, but we don't really know what that is. But it'll be fun. And I think we'll play music. But it'll only be work music. It's just 9 to 5 on repeat.
the action that you're going through, that eventually you've gone through so much that it becomes passive? Like, did you, like, come to any understanding after, like, going through, like, drawing all of those little circles or, like, knitting for 29 hours? Or...
Yeah, I mean, like, the drawings are kind of like, they're kind of like doodles. And so, like, and it was like for such long periods of time that it sort of like depended on like what was going on with me at the time. Like sometimes it would just be like, I'm just like drawing and thinking about the project, and that's nice. And sometimes I would just like start thinking about like all of the other things that I needed to be doing. I think I learned a lot about my anxiety. And my roommate and I started watching Sex and the City while I was doing some of these drawings. So I learned a lot about how that show damaged all. Yeah.
So, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Your ruminations almost seem scientific.
Mm-hmm.
And does randomness ever enter into your ruminations as you're working? So I'm thinking about the picture of your cat while you're trying to draw.
Yeah.
Which affected the drawing.
Yeah.
Perhaps the speed of the drawing and how fast
Yeah.
time's passing because your cat jumped in randomly.
Yeah. Like, am I ever surprised?
I mean, like, does it enter in?
Yeah.
And again, you just allow it to enter randomly.
Yeah, like, I think that the part of it that's, like, really scientific is the, like, I pick a predetermined, like, thing that I am doing, but everything else, like, I don't know at all. And so, like, each time that I would start one of the drawings, I would be like, I have no idea if this is going to end up looking cool at all, or if it's just going to be a complete waste of time. Especially like with the red one, it's like I'm just filling the page. And like for the first like 12 hours, it was like, this is just a tiny line on the bottom of the page. Like I have no idea if this is even worth it. So they were all kind of a surprise. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you done interactive like group projects before, or is this like your first time doing it where it's not like your own personal work?
Like this, it's my first time. But like I think teaching, there's a lot of like that feels often like very interactive in a similar way. And the gallery space that I run, like the way that we approach each project is that like when you get out of school, there aren't really like there's not a lot of opportunity for like prompts and like assignments, which is good for a general art career, but sometimes it's nice to have an assignment. And so like during that, like Rex, who is my business partner, like we were coming up with these like very strict rules, not super strict, but like these like guidelines, and then seeing what people do with it. And so like in that way, I feel like I've worked interactively like that, where it's like there's a little bit of control, but like not a lot of control. Yes.
It's really interesting seeing like the trajectory of your work over time. And it was interesting because Megan said that you have a background in design.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me, at some point you said like the Roomba project makes sense if the video camera is crappy, because it's like work is crappy basically, right? Or documenting artwork online is crappy. But I was curious about how your decisions in terms of design, how you balance that with the kind of concept of this endless work, right? And like, because I mean, I think the game boards are really beautiful, and I've always thought, wow, how did she like conceive of that and create it? So amazing. but it also has the concept that it never ends, right? Or that,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that nobody ever wins, you know?
Yeah.
So that's fascinating.
It made the game night that we hosted like really upsetting.
But like when you're approaching a project, how do you balance that sort of like frustrating, never-ending aspect of the work with the design decisions that you make? Like for instance, in the pen work.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really beautiful drawings, but does that run counter to the idea of like the work, you know? Or how do you make, I guess sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm just asking, how does your design background influence how you conceive of the project?
Yeah, I think with most of it, except with most of my work, my design background like plays very heavily into it. Like the pieces are like based on a lot of research, and like I figure out like what I want to communicate, and then I'm like designing a project to have a specific outcome. Like I know exactly what it's going to be and look like. With the work in this show, like the drawings and the aluminum foil ball and the like nailed it, like those I'm basically like designing the task and like the rules for myself, but like what that ends up being, I don't know, and is often like destructive. Like nailed it was like in a show, and then like during the show it broke more. And then like I guess like even like the Gmail piece where it's like the candy is dropping, it's like I have controlled like exactly, like I made the program myself that like should do exactly like the action, but then like there's a little bit of mess. Like I don't really know what it's going to look like in the gallery. So it's like with these, it's like if there's like that little bit of control that I'm like holding on to, and I'm like not straying from at all in that rule, and that's where the design part of it is.
Yeah. How did you figure out, or how did you design each like pen? Each pen had its own design. I was just curious how.
Yeah.
Decided.
I don't know, I was really just like trying stuff. So like based on the thing. So like in the so like the red one is the first one that I started, and I was just like I don't want to. I was like thinking, or I was like testing like what the pen could do. So like I wanted to fill the page, and so I was like, how long? Like I'm just gonna do like tiny lines, and like I did line by line as if I'm like kind of like a printer. And it was also like a super thin micro. So it was like this, it just felt like this pen can do this really well, and so that's what I'm gonna do with this pen. This one, there's like a little bit of layering that's happening. It was just like, well, I haven't used like this type of stroke, so I'll do that. These are like just a unit that I repeated. I mean, this one, I think like this is another example of like the form of it. I was like, I want to show off the eraser, and so I have to erase something that is difficult to erase, and I also want to like make sure that it's not dispersed so that like we can see like the effects of the erasing, and so it's just like this line over and over again. And then they're also just like a little bit, like sometimes it's just like, I was thinking of like things that I noodle. And so I just like started with like when I'm doodling, I'm sometimes just like drawing like really tight lines. So I'm just gonna like do that forever and exaggerate it. And so some of them are like, how does the material, like how does the writing implement seem to want to behave in my mind? And some of it is like, what do I naturally do? And then again, this was a nightmare. Yeah. This was not the thing that you should have done with this pen. Because it also like, this one was like really physical. It's the same pen as the red one, but it took way more time because I was like doing something like really delicate and small and like making the circles. So it was like I had to have like a certain amount of control, and so then that slowed everything down. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.